This time on Watchers of Tomorrow, Clue in Space.
Hello everyone, welcome to Watchers of Tomorrow, the sci-fi review and critique show where we're putting humanities back into science fiction. My name is Geffen and I'm joined as always by my friend and co-host Dr. Izix.
Hi.
And this time, because it's the final movie, and we got our original guest star back, so give a warm welcome, who no one can hear because we're recording this when you're not watching, but anyway, give a warm welcome to Dr. Omega.
Hello. Thanks for having me.
Welcome.
So anyone who's been listening to this show for longer than you probably should be, will remember that Dr. Omega was our first guest who came on to talk about E.T., whenever that was. I don't want to look it up. It'll make me feel old.
I was like, that wasn't that long ago, because I still had my desktop then, so... A wee while. It was a wee while ago.
It was before the pandemic.
Yeah, in the before times.
Yeah, in the long ago. So this week we have the final movie of the original Star Trek run is Star Trek The Undiscovered Country, the good one.
The good one is in parentheses at the end, though.
So like I'm not going to say that all of them are bad or anything. I've liked a lot. There's a few missteps here and there, but like this is the unqualified success that everyone agrees is the good movie and is always in the top one or two of Star Trek movies.
Yeah, it was a good swan song. Unfortunately, it did not remain a swan song.
It's at least for as far as saying goodbye to the original cast, it's basically the best you could possibly expect.
I agree with that.
Yeah, I'm really surprised just how it gives everyone their own thing and does a nice little goodbye thingy at the end and even makes a reference to how there's already another show on that you should be go be watching.
But others, you see, will they now?
We're passing the torch to another generation, the next generation, you might say.
Well, I gotta let you know that I went to go see this in the cinema for my birthday with a bunch of friends during, I forget if it was what year in the early 90s it was, but there was the worst ice storm that the Delaware County and Delaware Valley, like the, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Delaware tri-state area. It was the worst ice storm in almost a century. And so basically it was me, a group of my friends, and my mother in the theater.
Nice.
And my mother almost cried at the end.
You didn't get trapped there, right?
No, I don't know why my friends' parents let them out, because we went to TGI Fridays for dinner, and then there was nobody in the restaurant. We got like all of our drinks, free refills and everything. There was no one in the cinema. Probably we caused people to stay there, but we didn't die.
Well, how were they going to leave?
Well, because it could have just closed early. But like, look, we've got no business. We're like, we want to see Star Trek, actually, please. And they were like, oh, fucking great.
Are you sure? We're kind of in the middle of the apocalypse right now, so...
It was very thematically appropriate. There's an ice planet.
Well, you know what? Yeah, because that's what I was thinking about the next day. Because the transformer on my block blew, and the whole neighborhood was out of power. We spent almost a week at my Aunt Phyllis's house. It was crazy. But Star Trek...
Well, at least that would bring down the magnetic field to prevent beaming.
So yeah, as you referenced, 90s movie. This is one of the 90s movies that we have. So at this point in the series, this is releasing in 1991.
Oh my god, isn't that long ago?
Next Generation's already been on the air. We are out of the 80s for this run of shows, which this show started in the 60s and ended at the beginning of the 90s. So that's a heck of a run.
Aye.
Yeah, you have to go to either soap operas or Doctor Who in order to find something competing.
Yeah, like Coronation Street or something like that.
At this point, Next Generation's been on for 3-4 years, depending on when you're counting the start. I'm not going to look up the actual start dates of these things. So they're well into their swing. Everyone knows what they're doing with Star Trek. It's like a big, giant, decade-spanning, generation-spanning property now. And this is the perfect movie that they made out of it. Even I'll agree that I don't think they hit this, even though I'm not as big a fan of original series overall. Like, this is still just... This is like peak Star Trek.
Well, I think the thing that's confusing about some of the films is that TOS does really have like that, 1960s, it's science fiction kind of aesthetic and pastiche and everything like that. But Next Generation was such an advance. I mean, obviously it's, a few hundred years later in the Star Trek continuity timeline, but it just felt like, okay, this is Star Trek now. This is the future now, but then coming back to the original cast, who obviously look like they should have retired from Starfleet like a few decades previous. And you're like, yeah, but this really isn't the past or our present of the future right now. So it's kind of a bit like Uncanny Valley.
We're starting to develop some Z rust here. We need to transition to the future.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I remember watching because my mother, like, disclosure, my mother loves Star Trek. Like, being little, watching an episode of the original series, and there was like a tense, like, oh no, that there's a countdown that's happening. And it's one of those clocks, where all the numbers are written on the wheel, and then the wheel just flips over.
Yep.
I looked at it, and then I kind of like leaned over and looked into the kitchen where our microwave with the digital clock was, and I leaned back, and this was like 85 or 86. And I said to my mom, I was like, if they're in the future, why don't they have digital clocks like us? And I had a little bit of a trouble, like when I was a kid, discerning like that what you see on TV is a product made by current individuals. It's not for reals. My mom was like, no, because those are the props they had. I'm like, yeah, but it's the future though. And she was like, do you want a cookie? Yes. And I was like, yes.
We'll sort this out when you're older, perhaps.
Star Trek, especially this era, it's the last time that science fiction thought of itself as having those limitations. It's something that I always loved about retro sci-fi, because once you hit the modern full-on computer era and electronic miniaturization, people kind of stopped believing that there would be technological limitations in the future. And this is still like the last of the era when they're like, but how would we fit a computer on a spaceship?
Yeah, that's a really good point. Like, just the smartphone that I have in my pocket, would have been just freaking amazing if it had been on TOS.
Well, I do recall that, it's from the blueprints for the Enterprise D even. Their computer core is literally the size of a building.
Now, like Samsung probably has like a chip that can do 15 times that, and it fits, in a laptop or something.
Yeah.
But it's the future.
Your phone can do more than anything they show happening in the original series. Like,
that's so depressing.
The entire computer on the Enterprise. Like they still all pull out slide rules to do calculations. It's like,
that's a good point.
But hey, we don't get those cool colored cards or discs or whatever. Or I guess they also call them tapes at some point. Mm-hmm. And we can just put them in the computer and it does all the stuff we need for it.
Yeah, the tiny random squares of wood.
Yeah.
Mr. Spock, I found this. I'll put it in the reader right now. But I guess you do like that though. Like, I think it was one of the new Star Wars movies. Oh, the one with the one that was the heist, the war one, but now I can't remember. Rogue One. No, Rogue One. Rogue One nailed the the pastiche and aesthetics of 1970s sci-fi. Everything they did cinematography wise, like all the costume and all the art direction, that was the perfect leveling up of that with like in modern HD with modern CGI, but still retaining everything about that. Solo was okay.
Yeah, I wish that movie hadn't wound up in development hell to the point that it became a muddled mess, but the aesthetics were cool.
I have a lot of thoughts about new Star Trek or new Star Wars. I mean, but I don't know. Like there's that kind of innocence, especially about TOS, that you're like, oh bless, look at them.
Yeah,
just look at them going on with their science fiction.
They're trying so hard.
Remember when we thought the future could improve?
Everything's an allegory for fascism.
Well, we still do that.
Yeah, it's true.
All right, so we've been talking about it for a bit, so it almost seems a little silly, but I've asked every single guest star we've had on for this series. We let people pick their movies, and then they got weeded out over time. But since people got to pick their movies, why did you decide you wanted to come and talk about this one specifically?
I guess I felt very, very nostalgic about it. Like maybe it was because I saw it on my birthday in the middle of like the most drastic weather ever, or it could also possibly be David Warner who has, as far as I'm concerned, is one of the best voice actors ever in the world. Amen. Probably believe
That's
that.
kind of amazing.
Well, I think I probably believe that because I might have had a voice crush on Ra's al Ghul from Batman the Animated Series, which he voiced.
Oh, yeah.
Because he was always just like, he wasn't like a dick about it. He was like, "Oh, detective, it's me, Ra's al Ghul." And I was like, "Yes,
I'm
go on,
going
get
to
him."
be unsettling and reveal part of my evil plan in order to get you to fall into the other half of the evil plan.
Yeah, he's just vaguely sinister. Like what's his face? Like how Jonathan Pryce used to be in the Infinity commercials for TV. The Infinity i30 is just the best car. And you're like, "Oh, tell me more about it, Jonathan Pryce." It's amazing, amazing voice.
So how's this vehicle going to cause all sorts of havoc? Tell me more.
Well, the Infinity i30. But yeah, I think it might have been a combination of David Warner. Spock had a really good part to play in this, and I've always loved Leonard Nimoy. So I think it's just a combination of those factors. Like thinking back to a Star Trek property that I really enjoyed because I tried with Discovery and I was just like, this is okay. I mean, I guess I didn't like Voyager because I didn't like Janeway. I didn't like Enterprise, even though I do like Scott Bakula. DS9 was okay, but yeah, nostalgia.
I mean, that's basically the show. Honestly, that's why we do this. So that's fair. So yeah, like we said, this came out in 1991, was the last of the original series movies. Story by Leonard Nimoy. They couldn't let him direct again, even though several people wanted to, because if they let him direct, then they have to let Shatner direct, and that just gets this never-ending loop of making movies forever.
If you do it, then sure, your brother's going to want to do it, and I'll have no one to peace.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm. In addition to Leonard Nimoy doing the story, we also have Lawrence Kuhner, who did a lot of shows in this era, like Little House on the Prairie, and later worked on The Sopranos and the 2001 Planet of the Apes, Superman 4, The Quest for Peace.
Oh, yeah.
I like world peace.
Did work as a team with the other writer, who is Mark Rosenthal, who did scripts of movies that I have vaguely heard of, called Billie Jean and Jewel of the Nile, which I've heard of but never seen either of them, so I can't comment on his work much.
No, me either.
We do have some repeating guest stars and some new guest stars. Interestingly, the repeating guest stars aren't playing the same people. The main new character is Kim Cattrall, who's playing Valeras, who's the new Vulcan. We get a new Vulcan every single one of these things.
Smug, most I'm not suspicious, worst Vulcan ever.
Yes. She's got her start in like Police Academy, Big Trouble in Little China, The Mannequin.
I like Kim Cattrall, don't get me wrong. It's just that, like, you know, like Michael Burnham from Discovery is a better Vulcan than she is.
Yeah, she doesn't do a good Vulcan.
No, it's like how in The Witcher, everyone loves to tell Geralt how little emotion that Witchers have. And, oh, you see, Geralt, you have no human emotion. And yet, every time he reacts completely based on his emotions. And she's like, I don't have emotions. I'm not suspicious.
Stop looking at me.
Vulcans don't have emotions. How dare you?
No, but like, she's just so bad at being. She's written just such a bad Vulcan.
And of course, she's best known for playing Samantha Jones on Sex and the City, which I found was just an interesting. Like, so many people who played Vulcans in this era went on to have such interesting things that they're so well known for.
It's like all the people that played Ferengi on Deep Space Nine. I mean, Zara can tell you much more because she is super major heavy duty Trekkie. But yeah, like they all used to like get together at Armin Shimmerman's house and like hang out and have barbecues and like be like a family. That was like really, really neat.
That's actually kind of awesome.
Of course, like we said, David Warner is back. This time he's playing Chancellor Gorkin, which I kept thinking was Chancellor Gherkin.
Captain Kirk, have you had these small pickles? I don't know what you humans call them.
And Christopher Plummer is playing Chang or Kang. I swear they said it different throughout the movie, depending on which character was saying it.
General Chang.
Here's the thing. They were all being introduced with like their Klingon names. And this guy's last name is Chang, which is a real human surname for some reason.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Don't read too deeply into it, kids. The Cold War's
As
over.
they say in Discworld, there's only so many sounds in the world.
I guess.
So Christopher Plummer's career is long and difficult to summarize. He started as Shakespeare, did movies, was working for decades and decades and decades. Probably best known for his personal most hated film role of Captain Von Trapp in The Sound of Music.
Oh, right,
Yeah,
that
it was
was
him.
yeah.
And he hates it. He hated it.
Did he hate children, or did he just hate
He
musicals?
won't even
or-
say the name of the movie in interviews.
Wow.
Huh.
I love it. He's a man after my own heart.
Maybe he just really, really, really hates Austrians. Like, he's like, I'll tell them where they can stick their pretzels.
When was the last time any of you actually saw Sound of Music? This character is horrible.
Oh,
See?
25
Yeah, like everyone loves
years
Sound
of-
of Music, and you're like, when was the last time you watched it? It's like, oh,
Yeah, I listened to a podcast a few months ago. It was an episode of Musical Splaining. And basically they were like, this is bad, actually. And it's just been, like, probably, like I said, 25 or 30 years since I've seen the movie, and I listened to the whole podcast. I'm like, oh, it is bad, actually.
The last one of those I listened to was Repo the Genetic Opera. Like,
It's a really good series. Like, I'm an accidental musical queer. Like, I never really had a very good singing voice, so I was always like in the acting part of it. And you had to be in the inn in my school to get to be in the musical. So I was like in stage crew musical adjacent, and I'm just shocked with how much like I actually remember, and like how many times I've wanted to pause and be like, well, actually. But that's a good thing about it's a podcast, is you can't actually humiliate yourself.
Editing has saved our bacon numerous times.
People can't actually tell you in real time that you're wrong.
I stopped reading comments on the internet, and now I just put stuff out there, and I get to think I did a good job.
I've gotten into arguments on Lied
No.
Bible comment sections on Facebook. I don't know why I do this, but I do.
Entertainment purposes only.
Yes.
We got a bunch of other guest stars, and I'm just going to run through because I can't go through everyone's career in a limited amount of time. Rosanna De Soto plays Gorgon's daughter as it Burr. It's the weirdest freaking name.
I don't know how to pronounce it.
Brock Peters is back playing Admiral Cartwright. This is his second or third time showing up as Cartwright. I can't remember, but he's been in the other movies and went over that.
He's good at looking incensed.
He really is.
Yes.
We've got Curtwood Smith, who's famous from his role in RoboCop and That 70s Show, playing the Federation president.
Who is not a Klingon. I didn't know that until Czar told me.
Yeah, just the alien that he's playing, their species showed up in Star Trek 4 as like a helm officer or something like that.
Yeah, she says they're called the Ephesians, something like that.
Frisians, yeah.
Frozen yogurt.
But Frisia is also like a real place on Earth.
Oh.
Whoops. He also played Anorax in Star Trek's Voyager, The Year of Hell two-parter. He was also guess what, Geplin? Guess what he was in?
I know what he was in, and I'm going to have to explain this in-joke to another person.
Well, are you going to say it?
No, you get such joy from this.
Now I can't wait.
He was in Medium, actually, not the FBI. But he played an FBI agent in Medium.
Well, you spent 6 episodes setting up that joke, didn't you?
Maybe.
And our poor guest stars have been so confused.
Don't worry, Mega. I'll explain later.
I believe you.
I
I
just
trust
really
you.
hope anyone else was following this as much as I was, because otherwise this means nothing. Anyway, we also have Michael Dorn, who's playing Colonel Worf, who's Commander Worf's grandfather.
Yes.
I do love it.
I love it.
And did any of you watch the version of this that has Murray?
Rene Auberjonois.
Yeah.
Yes.
Did either of you
Who
watch
played
the
Odo?
version with him in it?
Yes, because of course Czar has the director's cut of just everything, and like literally, we moved to a bigger place, and she's got a whole entire
Nice.
studio full of DVDs now. It's great, but yeah. And she was like, "Look who it is! It's Rene Auberjonois." And I was like, "Oh my god, he looks about 25 to 30 years older than he does in DS9." And she's like, "Yeah, because in DS9 his face is like smooth prosthetics." And I was like, "All right, yeah." I guess that would make sense. I felt like an idiot. I said, but he looks so young. And she's like, no.
So the version
It's
that I
makeup.
watched didn't have him in it, and I didn't feel like looking up the alternate scene, and it's one quick thing, so he doesn't actually get mentioned in our synopsis, but, some people sought to see him, so that's fun.
Colonel West, not Oliver North. Yes.
Yeah, he gets a Scooby-Doo moment at the end.
Who is that masked man? All right, we can jump in. We've already spent so long just shooting the shit here, so hopefully I wrote this concisely. So we open to find Captain Sulu finally in command of the USS Excelsior, because he's deserved a command for years. All of them deserve a command by now, but I guess that would just be half the fleet at this point.
And they'll have 2 ships, so...
Well, they seem to, because the Enterprise or the Excelsior are always the only ship in the quadrant.
I was thinking about that. They're always very conveniently close to each other and everything else.
At this point in history, Starfleet must have, 10 ships.
Pretty much.
Well, they say that, when they're like, oh, let's stop, our Cold War with the Klingons. What are you talking about? Scuttle our entire fleet? And I was like, do you have your entire fleet hanging out in the neutral zone all the time?
Is there literally nothing else you guys do?
Because, I'm pretty sure there's, Romulans on the other side there. You should probably, because they're always up to no good.
Maybe pay attention to them.
Actually, we should get to that later, because that's an interesting point about the message of this movie. So Sulu's enjoying his tea when a massive explosion sends a shockwave through the ship and knocks over his tea.
Oh, my.
Oh no, Tuvok worked so hard on that.
So the Klingon energy facility on the moon of Praxis has exploded, which is bad, generally. Sulu offers aid to Klingons, their mortal enemies, but, they're like, nope, sorry, go away. We're fine here.
How are you?
We're all fine here now. Bye.
So a few months later, Kirk, McCoy, Scotty, and Uhura are called to a super-secret Federation top-level meeting where they get to hear news from the Federation envoy to the Klingons, which turns out to be Spock, because he does this sort of thing. The explosion at Praxis has done something bad to the Klingons' homeworld, and basically the entire empire is going to collapse in 50 years.
Oh, it knocked off part of their atmosphere.
Yeah, I just thought it was... I don't think they need to go into it as far as interstellar politics goes, because it would mean nothing to anyone, but they have a planetary empire, right?
Yeah, they could just leave.
Yeah, they do have, colonies and races that they've subjugated, according to Star Trek Online, which Tsar also plays.
I guess I see how if your capital planet got destroyed, that would be a giant disaster and would destabilize things. But they're talking about it like there's one planet in this whole thing. I don't think they need to go into it, but it's fine.
I don't. But Kronos might have a pretty huge population.
It probably does.
So they might not have enough viable colonies to resettle the entire population.
Well, they never mention what they do with it later, because they never mention the name of the Klingon homeworld in Next Gen. It's just the homeworld. Mm-hmm. So maybe they did all move.
We're going to hold this at Camp Kittimer. I'm sure nothing bad will happen here ever.
So this explosion has put pressure on the current Klingon High Chancellor, Gorgon, to begin peace talks with the Federation. They want the Enterprise to rendezvous with them and escort them to Earth. There's some discussion about the end of the war, meaning the end of Starfleet, because apparently military people never change. And Kirk, of course, is not very thrilled because he's very Klingon racist. This whole thing.
It's a metaphor.
He's also only 3 months from retirement. We all know what that means.
He's too old for this shit.
Yep. And there's also just, I can't summarize it well, but there is an amazing exchange between Kirk and Spock about being forced into stuff and how we shouldn't trust these people, and the 2 old friends arguing, and the character work in this movie. You have to just watch it. I'm not going to be able to summarize it well.
Should we be racist? Yeah, maybe we should stop being so racist. All right.
Give peace a chance, but Spock, to volunteer me, that's arrogant presumption. This will come up later.
Yes.
Yes, but they've been friends for decades. Why is Kirk continuously shocked by Spock's behaviors?
Well, I do still how even this is a good culmination of Spock's arc where he's bringing some emotion back in. He spent 4 movies coming to terms with how he has a human half. Mm-hmm. And he's still just oh, right, humans get mad, though.
Well, okay. I mean, I guess you could look at it like Data. Data slowly learns, you know what, I shouldn't say things like that to the humans because they really, tend to have an emotional reaction. But, like, how do we know that Spock's just not
He
trolling?
might be. Vulcans have emotion. Like, I've never seen a Vulcan not have an emotion. They are constantly annoyed as fuck.
No, they just have resting bitch life.
Yes.
Well, yeah, because they go into like the Vulcan mating period
On fire.
of like PMSness, like all gender PMS. No, that's a real legit thing. It's called Ponfar,
Ponfar.
and it's
Yeah.
basically like, yeah, they have to go and get hormonal and then challenge for a mate, and then everything's fine for a decade. Okay, so why isn't the fanfic matching up the Ponfar male Vulcans with the in heat Beta Z women?
No, that's a good point. I mean, I'm sure you could find it somewhere. I just have not looked.
Fanfickers, get on that. Just, copyright me.
So back on the Enterprise, finally, we meet Valaris, the first Vulcan to graduate at the top of her class. That's hard to believe. And
Take that,
Spock's
Spock.
protege.
Such Mary Sue.
She's like you, Spock, but better.
They depart and make their way to the Klingon Rendezvous. Kirk does a personal log about how he has reservations about peace and he can't forgive the Klingons for killing his kid a couple movies back.
With his door open.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, why are you dictating to your live journal with your freaking door open?
Because these doors are supposed to close by themselves. They probably don't even think about it anymore.
True. Yeah.
I guess.
Why is the door open? Why did the door break is the real question. Yeah, so the door is open and Valaris is out there listening in a definitely not suspicious way.
Smugly scolded.
She just wanted to say how happy she is to be here.
It's like they told her, okay, Kim, so for this role, we want you to not act. Just act like you're not acting. No, don't worry. That's what they're like. They're Vulcans. Just don't act. Or act smug. Smug, yeah. Do it again. Yeah, smug. Great, perfect.
Nope.
That's
More
right.
smug. There we go.
Then also later in Spock's quarters, he gives her some tea, tells her he wants her to take over when he retires. She's a big fucking deal, this girl.
He is going to be the next Spock, you see. So you got to respect that.
Yeah, Spock 2.
Graduated top of her class.
So they're soon joined by a Klingon battlecruiser, and on board is Chancellor Gorkon, who Kirk invites to dinner on the Enterprise, which is probably a bad idea. He arrives with his entourage, including his daughter, Azabur, General Chang, and Chang's just super excited to be here and loves yelling Shakespeare quotes at people.
Is it just because Christopher Plummer can do it, though?
Yes, that's the
I
only
knew it.
reason they do this, and he just has such fun.
All right. You're going to be playing a Klingon badass, and just be enthusiastic about Shakespeare. You can do that, right? Oh, heck yeah.
He's like, of course I can.
He's full on the only reason this character works. Like, any other person spinning around in his chair, excitedly shooting people, yelling random Shakespeare quotes. Like, this just should not work, but oh my god, it does.
There was a good shot. We actually had to rewind backwards because Zara spotted it because I was looking at Twitter. But like when he's spinning around in his chair, it must have been like the end of a take or a take that they didn't think they were going to use because there's an extra in the back that kind of just looks like shock. Like, did he just fucking do that? It's just very shocked Klingon, like, oh my god, the decorum.
So, dinner doesn't go well. Kirk is actively antagonistic to the Klingons. No one's joke land. The food is weird enough that they literally had to pay the actors to eat it.
I heard about that.
And everyone gets drunk.
On Romulan ale. Whoops.
Yep.
Isn't that, like, illegal? And Zara's like, yeah, at this point in the continuity, yes, it is very illegal. And I was
I
like,
mean, they
right.
even say, they're like, isn't this illegal? It's like, yeah,
Oh, yeah, that's right.
fuck off.
We do what we want, Mom.
And Gorgon's the only one who tries any diplomacy, like, at all. So the Klingons leave, everyone's hungover. Spock calls Kirk to the bridge because there's a weird amount of radiation coming from somewhere. And they're like, where's all that coming from? And then all of a sudden the Enterprise shoots a torpedo at the Klingon ship.
Oh no.
Who could have foreseen this?
The ship's shields are down because they weren't expecting this, and it does a lot of damage. The Enterprise is thrown into chaos. Scotty confirms they haven't fired anything, even though a second torpedo fires and knocks out the Klingons' gravity. Two people in Starfleet spacesuits zoom on board.
You opened up a Zoom meeting.
Chancellor, you're on mute. Mute.
Two people in Starfleet spacesuits beam on board with magnetic shoes so they can get around in the no gravity, and kill several Klingons on their way to assassinating Gorkon. after all this chaos and whatever, Kirk and McCoy beam over to help. They let McCoy look at Gorkin, but it's too late, and he knows very little about Klingon anatomy, and so can't save him. Even though he knew more about Klingon anatomy in Trouble with Tribbles, but he forgot.
He's old. He's got dementia now.
Yeah, I mean, right now he's like, I don't even know his anatomy. In Trouble with Trippers is like body temperature, heart, liver. This man is a Klingon. I know from how I know their anatomy.
Yeah, remember when Klingons were like super stealthy?
Mm-hmm.
I was like, oh, I wonder if this person's a Klingon. Now you can tell from like a mile off.
So they're not able to save the Chancellor, but before he dies, he begs Kirk to not let things end like this. But then after all the chaos, they arrest Kirk and McCoy for shooting them.
It's like, hey, your people obviously did this. Sorry, but we gotta arrest you. We'll deal with this in time eventually, probably.
So back on Earth, the Federation president does not really like that his people got arrested for reasons they don't really understand.
The entire Federation Council literally shitting themselves.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Like, oh no, we sent a hothead off to deal with this situation and it went wrong.
Imagine that.
Darn. We'll get to that later, because I think this is the only time that I can get behind them justifying sending Kirk specifically off to do something.
Surely he won't fuck everything up and fuck everyone.
The Federation president's hands are tied by interstellar law. Also, Azit Burr has taken over as chancellor, because I guess they have a dictatorship or hereditary monarchy or something. And she still wants to meet for the peace talks. But in exchange, they don't want there to be any extradition of Kirk and McCoy.
They're kind of responsible for this whole assassination of my dad thing, so maybe we'll hold on to them, and then we'll just pretend nothing happened other than punish these guys. How about that?
I kind of got the feeling about her that she might have been like his protege, and she was learning like the art of diplomacy from him, and that's why he had her with him on his mission and everything. Because, I mean, she does seem to be a very genuine character, even though, like,
yeah,
you're meant to think that she's evil.
I like her. She's a good red herring in this whole thing.
Agreed.
And she has a really intricate headdress jewelry
She
thing.
does.
In fact,
Chainmail.
She and Gorkon kind of like have the best styles here, I think.
Yeah, because he's got like the black and red leather kind of. It does almost look like an outfit that you would get in like some kind of medieval Western RPG.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Gorkin was very consciously modeled after Abraham Lincoln.
Huh.
Oh, like facial hair wise, or just
Yeah, like facial hair, and then they kind of spaced out his outfit. But like that, and the way that he has a cane instead of a top hat, but that's still like, erudite sort of thing.
I want to see a Klingon with a top hat. Would the top hat have ridges as well?
Probably. Though Kirk and McCoy are taken to Klingon court, they're defended by attorney Colonel Worf.
Yes.
He does his best, but Chang rallies the crowd. None of them actually make a legal argument, as far as I can tell, but I don't know Klingon law.
It's there's not really a jury here, just a lot of people yelling, and then a judge who just kind of arbitrates things.
Yeah.
With that cool ass metal ball spark glove.
I do like the spark ball.
Me too.
Reminds you of those things you'd get for Christmas, like stocking stuff, or sometimes there was basically just two balls of different colored gunpowder that you'd smash together to make gun smoke and sparks, and there was no other point to this toy other than that.
Yeah, I remember those.
I kind of want them now.
My wife did not have the same experience. I had to explain what they were.
I don't know if they sell those anymore.
Probably don't. I'll Google it, but they were like,
They
we were
seem
just
dangerous.
a terrible hazard. Here, kids, see if you can start a fire. It's fun.
Yeah. Would you like gunpowder that is small enough to eat?
Because they did look like sour balls or something like that. And I just
They
recall
did.
that I would smash them together until my room like just reeked of cordite. My mom would be like, "You should probably not be breathing that."
Chill out at least a little bit. Open a window.
So, old Worf is doing his best. Grandpa Worf is one of the good ones. His family's just always been good. But this thing was rigged because they're just immediately, like they say, oh, we're not going to kill you, but you do get life in prison on the death world.
Repente.
Have fun. The only people who've ever escaped here is Jonathan Arthur and maybe some other guy. Archer, there we go.
Yeah, there's a line that like, known throughout the galaxy as the aliens graveyard, and I was like, known throughout human space, I guess, because like
Yeah.
aliens wouldn't.
I guess everyone, there's a lot of species there, so I guess everyone's like, oh, that's the aliens' graveyard.
I guess
Like, the other aliens.
it sounds like some kind of like Star Trek inspirational poster. We're all aliens to a different race.
Everyone's an alien to someone. Well, I did like it. I skipped past, but at one point they even said during the dinner, it's like, oh, we think everyone has human rights. It's like, even your words are racist.
They do. They basically like check your privilege, humans. Okay, all right. They're called blaster balls. You can still get them. The first website that came up on Google was pyrodirect.com. So I don't know what that says about anything, but pyrodirect for all of your
Hey,
pyro
stocking stuffers.
Pyro Direct, get in contact with us and we'll get a sponsorship going.
Yeah, if you get any of these things and hurt your children, send me a picture on Instagram.
Jesus.
Not of the hurt children, of the explosions. I don't know. I'm trying to do social media tie-ins. Is it working?
Social media is the devil.
Find out on Linktree.
So, Reunification is an ice asteroid world, but one with an atmosphere. It's a big mine, and there's no guards, because if you try to leave, you'll die.
Well, that's...
Except there definitely are guards.
You know, the guards are like inside just to make sure you don't wander out easily.
So Kirk and McCoy are immediately harassed by large aliens, but they don't have universal translators, so they have no way of knowing what's going on. They were picked up by a lovely alien woman named Marta, and she seems to like them and gives them a warm welcome and tells them that there's a reward for their deaths, so watch out for that.
Not getting shivved in prison. Well, that was kind of the plan before, but now it's extra urgent.
See, there's a big problem about this scene, and we were watching it. We had finished eating dinner, and I said, "So that's Iman who plays that character, international supermodel, used to be married to David Bowie, just incredibly beautiful person. I do not believe at all her making out with grody, disgusting mid-60s." Grandpa bod William Shatner. I don't care how sexy Captain Kirk was,
but she does it to manipulate.
But it's like that part in the Matrix trilogy where like Trinity and Neo have sex in the worst choreographed way that it actually made sex look bad.
Yeah,
that's this. I was like, stop putting your mouth onto his mouth. This is horrible.
This is uncomfortable. Stop it.
Someone do something. Get an adult. That's disgusting.
Back on the Enterprise, they've reviewed the recordings of the attack again and again, and there's no way that a torpedo could have come from another ship, but the Enterprise didn't shoot anything because they still have all their torpedoes.
Well, that's weird.
So the only conclusion, once you eliminate the impossible, is that a cloaked ship was hiding under the Enterprise and can fire while hidden, something no other ship in history has been able to achieve.
Dun, dun, dun.
They keep bringing out this quote in various forms. Spock says it's an ancestor. I think it's just Sherlock Holmes.
Which is, Spock's implying that his ancestor is a fictional character, but given that Spock's a fictional character, maybe it works?
And he never says that it was a Vulcan ancestor.
You know what it is? I bet he fucking read the quote 3 weeks ago on his computer, and he was like, I'm going to use that. This was like millennia ago. Humans don't know their own history. They're idiots. I'll just say this, and they'll be like, "Oh, was it really Spock? Oh, wow, right. Well, yes, of course,
Or, and fanfic / spin-off series writers, Sherlock Holmes is one of the first Vulcans that came to Earth to check us out to see how we were developing as a culture.
That'd be great.
He just hides. John Watson has this super big / crush on him, and he doesn't realize it because he's a Vulcan.
So even though there definitely had to be another ship, the Enterprise computer was in fact altered to make it look like they fired torpedoes later. So whether or not there was another ship, whoever did the thing must be on the Enterprise, so they should start looking for them there.
That's actually one of the best part of the films is like the sleuthing, and it's mostly done in montage, but I did like that part.
It is. I mean, the way that Spock's just like, I'm solving a mystery here, pay attention. It's just very good.
Now, all you humans are just worrying, and I'm going to actually solve this problem here. Let's go.
I liked it because it was also showed like a lot of the crew, like pitching in like, we're going to save the captain and we're going to have a montage.
Yeah, well, Chekhov gets a bunch of good jokes in. Uhura's actually doing something for once. Scotty just swoops in at the end and saves the day like Scotty do. Yep. Everyone gets to do their thing.
Scotty, the most competent man on the ship, accidentally discovers a thing.
So they searched the ship for the magnetic boots that the assassins wore because they had to wear them to get back, and they couldn't have gotten rid of them because there's no way to destroy them or get them off the ship without setting off many, many alarms, as Valeris demonstrates by shooting dinner.
Whoops.
And I loved that.
I liked the demonstration, but then the crewman who's working on making lunch is like, what the
This fuck's sake. And there's like mashed potatoes all over the place. Although I love that, like, that's it. Like, you know, it's the future, but shit, how am I going to hide this incriminating evidence? I'll just shove it, like, in a vent and, like, walk away.
No one will find it here.
Exactly. I'll just hide this. Perfect crime.
So back to the mines, Kirk's being attacked by a large blue alien who almost gets him killed, but he's able to win by kicking him in the knees, which, nope, those weren't knees.
Ouch.
That was one of my favorite lines when I was a kid.
It's like, oh my god, haha. Today it's like, oh, that seems inconvenient. How do you bend down?
Well, no, like I don't know, like we don't know what kind of, if there's sexual dimorphism or if it's an auto-reproducing species, or maybe there's 17 different individuals that have to be involved. But like when I was a kid, the idea is like, oh my gosh, yeah, aliens would have their junk in another place.
Let me tell you about the Drowsy
like,
and their arm.
Those trousers were pretty flimsy. Like, I feel like he should have had like an athletic cup or something.
And then this whole species is like, oh no, I dropped something under the sink. Now I have to kneel down to get it. Oh.
I squat instead.
They have like little shin guards like you get when you played soccer when you were a kid.
So later on in the bunk room, Kirk prognosticates about how racist he is and how the Klingons are never going to do anything good, but, you know, maybe he was just too suspicious to do peace and things. And then before he finishes his thought completely, Marta shows up, makes out with Kirk, and tells them to report to the lift tomorrow morning if they want to get out of here.
Oh, okay.
And everyone vomits forever.
They do. The next day, Kirk and McCoy show up at the elevator, but there's no Marta, except there's a large, hairy alien dude there who speaks to them in Marta's voice and explains that they're going, they don't allow women, which is interesting that they have sex discrimination in the criminal death mine.
Yes.
Yeah, you'd think they'd be like, I'll just let her go. She'll be dead by first break anyway.
So they leave the elevator, and once out of sight of guards, Marta transforms into a small girl, which lets her just take off the giant shackle chains that she was in as the big hairy dude. It's like, I like that. That's clever shape-shifting.
Is she the same race as Odo?
Think so.
They call her a chameleonoid, so probably not.
Well, she doesn't really like shapeshift into like objects, just different sorts of humanoids. Some of them much larger.
That's a good point, yeah.
She could possibly be the same species as Wesley's girlfriend, the alien queen.
Oh, right, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
See, this has always been a thing for me. They get to DS9, and like, oh my god, this dude's a shape changer. What's a shape? Oh my god, shapeshifters all over. This is just amazing. The shapeshifters. Like, this is the 9th shapeshifter y'all have gotten to.
But he's really sarcastic. So that makes him the best.
So Marta leads them into a tunnel, turns back into the big guy because he's big and fuzzy and can handle cold, and she gives Kirk and McCoy some warm clothes that she hid there, and they head up to the surface.
This is rather convenient.
Kirk has this whole thing about how they keep making fun of him. He's like, oh my god, I can't believe I made out with this who's a big hairy dude. And I have several problems with this. I spent the entire rest of the movie trying to figure out whether this was transphobic. I can't quite tell.
Also made out with the same person who turned into the child.
That's the other thing. He's bothered that he made out with someone who turned into a big, hairy alien guy, but not that he made out with someone who can turn into an underage girl.
Yeah.
Remember Miri?
I mean...
Yeah, we try not to. But
I ain't saying, I'm just saying.
So back in the Enterprise, we sidestep that discussion and find some boots.
Oh, hey. Wait a moment. Crewman Dax? Dax, what have you
I was thinking about that.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, sorry, I haven't got my symbiote yet.
But this is basically just an excuse for Chekhov to make a fool of himself because he references Cinderella and then sees that this guy couldn't wear boots because he's got alien feet.
Oh, the more Chekhov changes, the more he stays the same.
But more importantly, they've detected Kirk and McCoy because Spock put a tracer on Kirk before they left the Klingon ship, meaning that they can pick them up from across the sector and that they can get to them as soon as they leave the anti-beaming shield. So now that they're out of the mine, they need to go deep into Klingon space.
Oh, it's convenient.
The thought that, like, they would have scanned them or something, or like at least given them like a body cavity search. Or
I know. It's not even like I have an injected tracker or something. It's like Spock slapped a patch on my back when we left. It's like, you're in completely different clothes. You've been gone for months. Like, what is happening?
Oh, Spock.
It's also a good thing that nobody else used this sort of tracker, because otherwise you'd be in trouble.
Wouldn't it be great if they're like trying to hone in on their signal, but they get like the moon, the moon in the next system's baby monitor?
So they have to have Uhura and the crew decipher a bunch of Klingon with physical books and dictionaries.
Yes.
I loved that. I loved that when I first saw it.
Computers and stuff here, but maybe they just didn't put it on the computer, all this stuff, but it's also convenient if they have these books. Huh.
It's also it's the absolute best use I've ever seen in a movie of literal translation to subtitles.
Yes.
The scene is only funny because of the subtitles.
They finally realize that the border guard's telling them a joke. They're like, so great. You, never change.
I just love it because like the border guards are laughing and then like, oh my god, what did they say? And one of the crew members in the back is like, just laugh. It doesn't matter. It doesn't.
Yeah, see, like I could have dealt with a lot more of like the Enterprise getting shit done kind of scenes.
So outside on Reunification, Marta starts a campfire using some sort of flare doodah that turns ice into hot. Which I love this. I don't know how it could function, but I love that.
Magic.
I have a tube of that stuff. It's called Icy.
She explains that she's a chameleonoid, which is a kind of shapeshifter. Kirk finds this off-putting because of the making out, but we went into that already. But then he immediately attacks her because she was obviously colluding with the guards because this is all way too convenient. And she admits that because they needed to be killed escaping because an accident would have looked suspicious to kill both of them at once. But, killed escaping makes perfect sense.
Yes, actually.
Yeah, but that's like, you never believe a single thing that Vladimir Putin says.
Yeah.
So, like, why did the Klingons think, oh, we have to make this look legit? We're not coded as, like, the evil bad guy Cold War team. What will people say that the bad guys did something? I mean, obviously, just kill them while they're in prison and be like, they died somehow.
Because if they just shoot them as soon as they show up, they can't actually escape.
Yeah, you can just lie.
Yes.
They could have saved themselves all that effort by just shooting them when they got there and be like, they died somehow.
See, this is probably one of those Klingon honor things. I can't lie, because that would be dishonorable. But I can orchestrate a fake escape attempt and then kill them, and then I don't have to lie.
And because they tried to escape, then it's legit. I'm not just murdering somebody in cold blood.
I mean, maybe if, like, the high command is the uncle from Ghost of Tsushima, and he's like, oh, but your honor.
The Marta transforms into Kirk. We get fun, like, Kirk fighting Kirk stuff.
Again.
And they make a bunch of jokes about how he always did want to make out with himself.
My mother really liked that scene. She laughed a lot at that.
And then the Klingons show up, immediately figure out who's Marta and shoot her. Either that or Kirk is dead and the rest of the series is just Marta going like, you know what, I'm just going with this.
Nobody notices, then it's all cool, right?
Kirk goes, you know what, who's behind this? And the Klingon says, well, sure, I'm going to kill you anyway, so, and then they get beamed out.
Do you want to go back?
I like that. That's a good turnabout of the trope.
I love how much humor they started putting back into these things. People need to understand that the premise of Star Trek is inherently stupid and needs jokes.
Yeah, because when it wasn't being up its own ass, up its own ass in a good way, with like, very, very famous 60s sci-fi authors like coming in to like write single episodes which were about religion and fascism and the human condition and stuff. And you also did have like Trouble with Triples, and that's just hilarious.
Which is also a super famous author coming in to write comedy.
Mm-hmm.
Chang on board the Bird of Prey finds out that Kirk and McCoy have escaped basically immediately and decides to give chase because he doesn't want to give them a chance to actually do anything, which like, this is one of those villains that's like, they're the heroes, I have to actually kill them or they're going to find a way to do the thing.
I should probably stop that.
Like, I can't just be like, well, they don't know where the secret meeting is because they're going to find out.
Yeah, and I like how like Sulu's like, oh yeah, I know the secret meeting. It just everyone does. Jeez.
So Scotty is reading over schematics in a room for no readily apparent reason, just because he does that.
Sar said, she's like, it's kind of funny that he has a adult coloring book of the Enterprise schematics.
So he hears a noise coming from the vents and just finds the missing uniforms. because they were just in a random vent in the galley. He takes them to show Kirk and Spock just before they trip over the assassins' corpses in the hallway.
Oh, it's these guys' uniforms. Well, I guess that takes care of that then.
Case solved.
They were both killed with short-range stun blasts, which apparently don't set off the alarms.
Should fix that.
Again, you'd think.
Yeah. Like, you have literally no reason to fire a phaser on the ship unless something has gone very wrong. So it seems like it would just always set off the alarms.
Yeah, because you wouldn't, even if you're, training, you wouldn't be using a phaser set that high. It's like, we have a plot reason for part of this, but not enough. It's like, that really pissed me off. I saw a few of the Harry Potter movies way back in the day. I can't remember which ones, but I was like, if they know when an underage wizard is like wanking his wand, like why do they not use that kind of technology to make sure that if anyone ever uses the unutterable, like unholy curses, that like everyone in the world knows where they are? My friend was like, hush.
Magical privacy concerns, apparently.
It's the GDPR for wizards. Every time you cast a spell, you get a little pop-up asking you to adjust your advert preferences. Oh, dear.
Earlier, Chekhov's like, why didn't they just vaporize the boots? And then they do the demonstration and the alarms go off. And then this scene, McCoy's like, why didn't they just vaporize the bodies? Just because the alarm.
You know that one that we've always had that we're just talking about now?
So this does, however, give Kirk an idea, and the announcer of the ship's intercom that they need the court reporter to come take testimony from the two guys in sickbay, because that's not a weirdly suspicious way to make that
Yeah, I was thinking about that. Like, they're showing, like, the people who have black uniforms who are setting the table in the galley, and they're looking up like, I wonder what that's about. We decided that they're actually, like, third-party caterers.
Probably, because how ticked would you be if you went through the academy and signed up for Starfleet and, like, went through all of this? It's like, you get to set the table.
Yeah, like, we had this whole backstory that, like, the best space cruise company was like, oh, you know what? If you're escorting the Chancellor, you'll need, like, proper, like, legit top-notch service. So we'll send you some contractors who they're, like, the best, like, they're on their flagship cruise ship, and they're just like, fuck me, I didn't expect this.
This sounds like something that's going to just show up in Lower Decks one of these days. It's like the elite catering corps.
That'd be awesome.
Would you like a vol au vent, sir?
So, an assassin sneaks into the dark room of sickbay and finds Spock, who's very, very disappointed to see that it is Valeris.
That is the quintessential, like when he slaps her phaser away, I'm not mad, I'm just disappointed.
Pretty much.
He accuses her of not being logical, because if she was logical, she has to kill him. There's no other option.
And she's like, but my feelings.
This is just the natural culmination of her decisions.
But my emotion.
I'm busy being shocked right now. Give me a minute to know logic later. And I don't have the phaser anymore.
Like, I legit thought when I first saw it, like, the reveal would be that she was actually Romulan, like, with plastic surgery to look like a Vulcan. And I was like, I knew it, she wasn't a real Vulcan, but she was.
That would have been better.
It would have.
Vulcan extremism has always confused me mildly.
Crops up in weird ways. It's not super consistent.
Because it makes sense that you could get there. But this show, like all of Star Trek, this is a criticism I have for all of Star Trek. It spends so much time circle jerking itself with logic and how great logic is and how Vulcans are logical. And they never go into exactly the same logic that let this Vulcan do this amazing, great altruistic thing also let this guy become a terrorist.
Well, you do see them occasionally in YouTube comments. Like, people are just, I'm just so logical. Are you triggered yet?
Just logic, man.
I've been able to prove that it is illogical for Debbie not to have dated me. It's taken me 20 years in this basement of my mother's.
Which was also very logical.
Exactly.
Do you see rent prices nowadays?
That's what most of evolutionary psychology reminds me of. Just sad incels sitting at their computer trying to statistically prove that she should have gone out with them.
That's the best description of evolutionary psychology I've heard in a long time.
Yeah, I had an evolutionary basis in my thesis, so I had a whole 2 paragraphs in the introduction going out of my way to say that this is not a work of evolutionary psychology, doesn't fit the tenets of the field at all. My supervisor was like, is this really necessary? And I was like, yes. I don't want to be lumped in with those guys.
You spent 2 paragraphs going, I'm actually using this for something. I'm not just trying to backwards justify modern capitalism using an evolutionary lens.
Oh my god! I get updates. I get Elshire updates, and I do get just some the weirdest updates of papers that are published. And it does all basically amount to, like, the pheromone producage of the adult female upon seeing the male of optimals. Oh, Jesus Christ. Just go on OnlyFans. She doesn't like you. Anyway, Star Trek.
So, of course, Valaris, now being caught, denies everything. But Kirk already knows she was the spy because that log entry that he made earlier was used against him in the courtroom. And she was the one who heard it.
The only person who could have been outside his door at that time.
I think in my headcanon that he does it every day and he just doesn't realize that the door is open, or he doesn't care. And there are actually like a bunch of people who just gather on either side of the door to listen.
Yeah, there's just the crew brings popcorn.
What's he talking
Capri
about today?
Suns.
His son.
It's like, oh my god, he's still whining about his kid. He didn't even know he existed.
And that's the thing, too. He has an actual like photograph, not like a digital hologram or something.
It's like this whole sad dad thing of like, yeah, I was a sad father who never knew his kid and abandoned his family and just worked too hard, but my god, the feels. So anyway, she blames Kirk for betraying Starfleet by siding with peace talks, and Klingons can't be trusted. And so some Federation higher-ups and the Klingons are working together to sabotage the peace talks.
And also the Romulans.
The Romulan ambassador, that one guy.
Yeah, okay, it's just the one Romulan. But they're always up to no good.
She doesn't want to tell them anything, so Spock uses a very morally dubious forced mind meld. Like, it's not even dubious, it's just wrong. But, you know, he's angry.
And they go out of their way to code it as wrong and invasive, because she's like crying out and like sobbing. And like you flash to like the others, and Scotty's like, I didn't think that. And Uhura like puts her hand over her chest, like, oh my god, I'm seeing someone getting raped in front of me. Like, it's basically,
yeah.
So at least they went out of their way to be like, this is not good.
I know. I do like that the movies, like, they show it, and it's shown as like possibly necessary to figure out stuff, even though it's definitely not. Definitely not necessary. They could have just called Sulu like they do in 10 seconds. But yeah, they show that it's bad, which is better than we've gotten in a lot of these mind reading cases.
I guess to a certain extent, as far as how things have been set up so far, you know, Valaris was Spock's protege, so he's very disappointed. And this is like the time in all the movies and show and things like that, where Spock is basically pissed off and barely able to hold it in.
Would you say that he's acting on his emotions?
Yes.
Aha, for you see, Geralt, never mind.
Well, I do think overall, like, I was looking at this, it's like, well, Spock's freaking pissed, but, you know, they spent 3 movies at this point setting up that Spock needs to come to terms with the fact that he is, in fact, half human and has emotions.
And I think, like, him just portraying the sheer depths of that pissedness with, you know, so little, like, it's not like he, like, chews the scenery or anything. It's very well done.
So, like I said, Kirk calls Sulu and the Excelsior, basically making the whole mind torture thing unnecessary. And because Sulu knows where the peace talks are being held, and he's heading there to help, but they might not all reach it in time. So, you know, they gotta rush. This is nice. Sulu gets very intense in these things, like, we're tearing the ship apart. Well, let it fly apart. I have to go save Kirk.
I love George Takei. He's great.
Which is also great. I mean, it's immaterial to anything, but like all these scenes where he's like, oh my god, I have to save Kirk, my best friend and mentor, and just knowing behind the scenes is like, I hate that guy.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, it does, it is a little bit different watching this now, like knowing that like Shatner's just such a fucking tool. Like,
I mean, I've known he's a tool my whole life, but I still enjoy these things.
I'll say I didn't when I was like 11 when I saw this movie, you know? So I was like, it's Captain Cook, that's really great. But now I'm just like, oh, he's such a dick on Twitter.
See, that was my first intro to the series. My mom, like, introduced me to this. She was the big hardcore Star Trek fan. She introduced me to Star Trek. And one of the first things she said was like, okay, so Captain Kirk, that guy's a douchebag.
Yeah.
So she had all these things. It's like, oh yeah, Kirstie Alley didn't continue because she said she couldn't work with Shatner. Shatner hated the rest of the crew. He alienated everyone on set. It's like, it's just like constantly from the time I was introduced to the series. Like, did you know that Shatner's a douche? Let me tell you about how Shatner's a douche.
Like, I didn't know that Canadians could be dicks like that. Like, I always thought they were so nice, but...
Well, they get exported to the U.S.
They get kicked out.
We're so sorry, but you're just not polite enough. You have to go to the States.
So Kirk and Spock have a nice heart-to-heart about how they've outlived their usefulness, and risking your life for peace is worth it anyway. I just love that. We'll get into it a bit, but like, this is kind of the whole message of the movie and this discussion, which I love, is like, yeah, I'm definitely an old racist, but that doesn't mean I have to act like an old racist.
Maybe we can be better.
Would you say that he got woke?
This is where we put the CSI sound, right?
Well, I mean, if you think about it, he was canceled by the Klingons.
True.
And then he does do the thing where he tells everyone how canceled he was. And then at the end, he tells everyone how silenced he was in the form of a big, huge, long speech that everyone stops and listens to. And then the whole room fucking bursts into applause. And I turned to Zara and I said, and that admiral's name? Albert Einstein. And everyone applauded.
So they arrive at the Kittimer place where they're holding the talks. Kang calls Kirk to yell Shakespeare at him, mostly, because he feels like it, and then just starts firing.
I even said, like, wait a second, do they not have to, like, accept transmission? Because in every single other original series, it's, oh, we're being hailed. Okay, accept transmission, or, like, put them on the screen, or, like, no, reject it, we're not picking up. But he just seems to be like, hold on, let me just hack your mainframe there.
Like, it's the Shakespeare override.
Shakespeare override.
You see, in the future, whenever someone's quoting Shakespeare anywhere on the ship, everyone hears it, even if they're, on a different ship.
It's just such an example of technology when we feel like it.
Mm-hmm. So Kang hits the Enterprise with several torpedoes. They can't fire back because the ship is cloaked and they don't know where it is. The Federation president and Azet Burr are giving speeches on the planet. There's a Klingon sniper setting himself up in a light fixture. Spock suddenly has some inspiration that whether or not the Klingon ship is cloaked, they must be venting gas in order to move the ship, because that's how engines function.
Wait a moment. Did we steal some equipment from the Excelsior somehow?
Yeah, about that.
Yeah, they have a bunch of equipment to study gaseous anomalies.
Which is what the Excelsior is doing.
Everyone studies gaseous anomalies. You know how many gas clouds they find on this show? Everyone has this.
That's true, because it wasn't like they were always doing that in Next Generation. They're like, oh, we have to go chart some fucking cloud. Oh no, something terrible is inside the fucking cloud.
Oh, it's sentient. Oh, it impregnated someone.
How would we ever have foreseen this?
It's full of haunted children and weird strands of stuff.
See, we as the audience get confirmation bias, because this only happens like 1 every 10,000 clouds they study, but the rest of them aren't on the show because it's just too boring to watch.
It's selection bias.
Mm-hmm.
Like a little sign, this many days without a gaseous anomaly.
They have equipment on board to study anomalies, so Spock grabs McCoy to do some emergency surgery on a torpedo.
Fascinating.
This is just also great. It's the last scene of the movie, and Spock and McCoy are working together to save the ship.
I do like that, but basically like crawling after the torpedo as it's going to launch.
The Excelsior arrives to give the Klingon ship a second target. McCoy and Spock, of course, finish the torpedo just in the nick of time to prevent both ships from being destroyed. The torpedo very slowly homes in on the Klingons as Kang slowly realizes what's happening. Then both the Enterprise and Excelsior fire at the target that the torpedo just hit and destroy it in seconds because they're cloaked and don't have shields.
See, I said that I thought that being able to cloak with shields up would be more valuable than being able to fire while cloaked. They should have worked that one out first.
That would be the smart move.
Mm-hmm.
But this is also the TOS era where the Klingons come up with new tech every once in a while, and they'll use it once, which I guess is kind of fair than later in Star Trek where they come up with the tech of the week and only use it once, and then they just kind of forget about it. So,
see, here's the thing. Both Klingons and Romulans have cloaking technology. You cannot tell me there has not been some Federation spy or someone in the Federation able to get some of that technological knowledge.
I believe there was an episode of the original series that where Kirk runs off the Romulan cloaking device. But,
Yeah, but only so they can figure out how to get around it, not so they can use it like the dirty commies who sneak around.
Yeah, that was something else I was thinking is, so kids watching this now without the benefit of the context of the Cold War, like there's just so much coding that's lost. I mean, like when I was young, I remember watching stuff. I was like, oh no, it's the Russians. Oh no, it's the Chinese. They could be up to anything. And kids today will be like, wow, why was this show just so racist towards Klingons and Romulans? I don't get it.
So they destroy the bird of prey. Kirk and crew beam down to the planet. Kirk tackles the president out of the way right before the Klingons shoot him. Scotty appears behind the assassin and shoots him. And he falls down into the main hallway. Probably shot him a little harder than he meant to.
Yeah, I thought that was great. He's like, shoots and he's like, blah! Just launches himself out the window.
Despite all the shooting and people beaming in and out and assassins being tackled and admirals being arrested/counter-arrested, Kirk gives a big speech about how great peace in the future is, and everyone applauds.
It's like, we're kind of shocked by what just happened, but okay, let's go with it.
Like, everyone's just stunned, and like deer in headlights, like, what in the world is going on? It's like there was a terrorist explosion in the back of the room all of a sudden. No one knows what's happening.
People rush in with phasers drawn.
And Kirk says, like, some people think that the future means the end of history. Like, I don't know, this guy's giving a speech. Clap.
If we clap loud enough, maybe they'll not shoot us.
It was so hokey. As the children say, it was quite cringe.
It was very... It's like, why are we clapping?
Now, I will say that in the context of, a first viewing of this movie, it's an exciting moment and it kind of brings everything together. And so you don't necessarily think about this kind of weird situation here. But yeah, after so many viewings over so many years, it's like, I can't help but notice this ridiculousness now.
It's just, you know what? It's like at the end of the kids' movie where they have to bring up the lesson. Or like the old 80s cartoons like He-Man and She-Ra, which would actually have a few minutes at the end for you to discuss the lesson if you didn't get it the first time.
But the lesson was often very disconnected from the random show.
That's true.
I still remember watching some of those old ones as an adult, and was like I just would watch He-Man on reruns on TV as an adult, and they'd be like, well, as you saw today, this guy messed with something he didn't understand, just like how you shouldn't eat random berries you find outside.
Yeah, like at least the G.I. Joe ones made sense. Although I recently, like when the pandemic began, I've got two nieces in Utah, and one of them was 4 turning 5, and I thought, you know what, this will be great. So I sent her through Amazon because it was her birthday. I sent her the complete She-Ra, the original She-Ra, and I was like, oh, this is so great. It's the whole thing on DVD. She's gonna love it. And then I found a site where I think they're all like up legally on the internet. And I watched the first episode of She-Ra, and I thought, oh my god, this is horrible.
This is
But it's horrible in such an interesting way.
Like, I loved He-Man. I was all about He-Man when I was a kid. She-Ra, I could take or leave, because She-Ra was smart, but she had idiot friends that always were just idiots. But yeah, then I was like, all right, well, I'll watch some episodes of He-Man. That's shit too.
Yeah. I think the original She-Ra is fascinating because it's like almost accidentally a feminist show just because they were too lazy to change anything and just did like a 1-for-1 gender swap of He-Man.
Mm-hmm.
And that's it. Like, okay, she had friends that they were idiots, and I think that Skeletor is a better supervillain than Hordak is.
Oh, he definitely is.
But
Bo, she has the man toy. I cannot get over the man toy who has a heart cut out in the middle of his chest.
He's got that 80s mustache, which everyone knows is code for gay. That's not my headcanon, it's just the facial hair facts.
Mm-hmm.
And like I saw a few episodes of the new She-Ra on Netflix, and it's cute. I think if I was a little kid, I'd be like, oh, this is great. But I'm glad that kids have not shit animation now.
It's actually very worth watching all of. It gets more interesting as it goes.
That's what I've heard, that there's a lot of very significant character development that provides salience on both a child level and an adult level. So it's one of these days when I have time, maybe I'll catch up on that.
There's also an entire episode where they imagine what the show would be like if they were still making it with the old costumes and things.
Really?
Nice.
That's fantastic, actually.
Yeah. So everyone saves the president. Assassination plot's been thwarted. I guess peace has achieved.
Yay.
Achievement pop up. Peace. Good job. Peace with the Klingons.
All the murderers are dead or arrested now, so hooray!
They'll return to the Enterprise to say goodbye to Sulu, and then they get orders to return to Starfleet to be decommissioned. Spock goes, well, I believe the appropriate response would be, go to hell.
Let's just pirate off with, like, a very valuable Starfleet crew and ship and everything, and surely everything will be fine.
What are you going to do? Stop us? We're the frickin' Enterprise.
This was the hokeyest part.
We only have one other ship, and it's the Excelsior, and Sulu's running that, so,
Like, I know it's supposed to be a legit, like, touching moment, but just watching it now, it does come across as very ridiculous.
A little bit, especially if the thing is, so it's like, we're ready for more adventures. Like, course, like, second star to the right, and straight on till morning. Then this is how all of this is actually just a Peter Pan prequel, where Kirk shows up and becomes Captain Hook.
I think parts of Peter Pan are in public domain, so...
yeah, it works out.
Oh, Star Trek.
So Kirk is Captain Hook, and the crew of the ship is the rest of the pirate crew. But crewman Dex goes on to become the alligator. There we go.
Makes sense. So I think you can't really talk about this movie without mentioning that it is a direct end of the Cold War allegory. Full on.
Yes.
There's nothing else. That was even like the stated purpose of the script. It's like, what if Klingon Chernobyl?
Pretty much.
Mr. Gorbachev, bring down that cloaking device. Now, I remember the fall of the Berlin Wall. We watched it on TV because I was watching something, and my dad came and I was like, well, but I was watching that. And he's like, the Berlin Wall is about to come down. And I was like, that's true, but also Garfield.
Yeah. Like, I have no context for this. I am a child.
And actually, I've been to Berlin, and I'm actually holding a little desk thing that I got, which is a legit piece of the Berlin Wall that you can buy in Plexi. Oh. And it's all right. There's a McDonald's right there, so much for the Cold War.
Now there's McDonald's now, in Red Square. There's that one song about the Tetris and the Soviet Union. Anyway.
Yes, I love that song.
Yes. And
the band, they're a folk band, so everything else they do sounds nothing like that one song that I like, and I'm like, well.
This is awkward. So it's a little interesting as far as timing goes. This movie came out on December 6th, and it was of 91, and it was December 26th that the USSR dissolved officially.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
So it was just 20 days later, and Star Trek apparently ended the Soviet Union. Clearly.
Yep.
Well, I saw it a month later in early January, 92, so that was my 12th birthday. Wow, has communism been over that long? Wow, geez, you guys.
Mm-hmm. So Star Trek inspired the end of the Cold War, and now I guess we're going to have another Cold War in a minute. That's all anybody keeps talking about, but that's neither here nor there.
Hooray, nostalgia.
Like, thinking back to, like, stuff like MacGyver, and I love me some MacGyver back in the 80s. Yeah, you really do kind of lose that context. It just make it seem like America was just really, really, really racist towards the Russians and the Chinese and the North Koreans for like a good wee while there.
I do think this shows a little bit of the strength that I keep talking about in science fiction specifically. Because like the Klingons have never even been, particularly Russian coded. They've been kind of general racist, Middle Eastern, Chinese, amalgam, Asian looking dudes most of the time.
Some Orientalism going on here.
Yeah. And then in the movies, they transfer them over to Japanese, which doesn't make a lick of sense.
I always thought that the Romulans are meant to be Russia. And the Klingons are meant to be China. Or is it drive that
more or less?
Okay.
More or less, yeah. They're both meant to be sort of... I mean, they're both sort of both in the original series. By the time you get to later stuff, then yeah, you've kind of gotten more Romulans as Russia and Klingons as China, even though Klingons are coded Japanese with their dress and honor system.
Do you know, apparently that's not even a thing? Like,
it wouldn't surprise me.
I follow a Korean artist who lives in the States, and she makes some really amazing pottery, and that's why I ended up following her. And then she will live tweet stuff sometimes, and she was really like, "White people, why is this a thing? Is this a thing you really do, white people?" And sometimes I'll be like, "It is," and sometimes I'll be like, "No, I not in my family, no." but she was playing Ghost of Tsushima, and she's like, what is all of this mess about honor? Why is everyone always going about honor? She goes, when I think about honor, I think about like European knights and stuff like that. And I replied and I said, well, see, we were always being told in America that like, oh, well, you know about Asian folks, they're so honorable and like they care so much about their honor and they all behave themselves because of their honor. And she's like, lol, no, it's not like that at all.
Where is this coming from?
I was always told that like all the East Asian countries, like they care about honor so much, but apparently, I mean, well, I guess she's just speaking for South Korea, but they're like, no, where are you getting this from?
It's not how we roll here. But to a certain extent, you know, it's a weird selection / smearing of perceptions is probably happening. You know, that, you know, general American populace, especially in this last century or so, it's like, all right, so, you know, we're going to be racist in a different way. We're going to sort of assume these very specific, traits for anyone who comes from this half of the planet. And we're not going to do any homework in order to try to differentiate them and all. So it just anyone east of here this is how they are. So let's just go with it. Honor. That works, right?
And you know what's really weird is in Europe, like it's just always a tinderbox of grudges that go back for centuries, where you will have one country, you know, or group being racist against another group, and then coming from American context, I don't understand how this is racism because you're both white. And so my wife has to be like, yeah, but like there's a whole different world of racism outside of American racism. And I was like, all right, it's so simplistic in America. We just hate everyone.
Well, we used to make those divisions, 50 years ago when we still considered Italian and Irish and Scottish people to not be white. But
that's true.
Then we couldn't keep it straight. We're very bad at keeping those things straight after a generation or two.
Well, it's like I was having a discussion once with my sister-in-law, and she's like, well, in America, she said, do Jewish folks count as white? And I said, I don't know, actually.
Depends on
sometimes.
Who you talk to, I guess. Yeah, sometimes.
My dad's Jewish, and his whole family is. But, like, they wouldn't describe themselves as people of color. I wouldn't describe them as people of color. They're just, like, American around.
But there are racists who would.
Yeah, that's true. And so it's
no, they wouldn't maybe use people of color. They just say some horrible thing instead.
That's true.
Yeah.
So the point is that if you hate Klingons and Romulans, you're a big racist and you need to get canceled immediately.
Basically, just like Kirk.
Hooray!
I was silenced on Rua Pente. It goes on Alex Jones to complain about it.
But I think it's interesting that you can, all of us have at least a passing knowledge of the Cold War and lived through at least some part of it. Whether or not, I was very, very young, but I still do have a vague memory of my mom, going, oh, this is important, the fall of the Soviet Union. I'm like, sure, but I was watching Wallace and Ladmo.
Exactly, yeah.
I guess, my earliest experience with the Cold War was, I was really into, looking at maps when I was young. So I'm like, wow, this country's really big. It's like, oh, yeah, that's the USSR. We're kind of, not liking them, and now I was trying to explain a little bit how things work in a oppressive dictatorial system there, and it was just like, wow, that's just horrible.
Yeah, I remember being told that in Russia, you have to when you graduate high school, you have to go on a big stage in front of the whole town, and then the communists tell you what job that you have. Doesn't matter if you wanted to be a teacher. Guess what? You're a policeman or a baker. And I legit, I would think a teacher told me that when I was in elementary school, and I legit believed that far too long in my life. That literally, in the Soviet Union, you were just assigned a job, like picking out of a hat, kind of.
In some ways, doesn't that sound great now?
It kind of does, though.
You graduate high school, and here's your job. It's like, oh, cool.
I believe.
Now I don't have to do anything.
You're a taxi driver. Okay.
Oh, okay. No, that works. Wait, I have to drive in a city. Damn it.
It's job security.
The only particular thing I remember is when I was a kid, my parents were talking about communists, and I was like, why do we have to be fighting each other? It's like, they want to destroy our way of life. It's like, oh, okay.
I don't know what that means yet, but okay.
So this might sound like it has nothing to do with anything, but not last week, but the week before, we had this guy come in to steam clean a mattress. And this is because the flat that we moved into was mostly furnished, and we were having people over, and this mattress, we don't know the last time anyone slept on it, but it looked manky. So we're like, look, our state agent knows a guy with a steam cleaner, who I actually had to ring up and be like, hi, is this Patrick with a steam cleaner? He's like, aye, right, yes, so it is. So this old guy showed up with this huge steam cleaner that, God love him, I helped him get it up and down the stairs. I thought he was going to break his back. But then I guess he assumed that I would stand there in like the toxic bleach fumes with him and just converse the whole time. But he was a nice guy, but he kept asking me like, "Oh, but so what do you think about China, right?" And I was like, "Well," I said, "the government's kind of bad, but the people are just people, like farmers and accountants and stuff." And he goes, "Aye, right," and he like starts going off about like all this like geopolitical stuff, and I was like, "Dude, I think you have a much bigger opinion of China than China does itself. Like, I really don't think that they're getting up to all the stuff that you think they're getting up to." I finally was like, dude, China just wants money. I mean, you don't have to invade anywhere to get money. You just have to sell stuff.
Yeah. I myself run into occasional folks that are like, have read somewhere or something, and then like, this is the next big move from China that's going to unravel our geopolitical balance and give them ultimate power over large swaths of the world. I'm like, you do realize that they're not the only player in the world, first off. Two, there's a lot of people that are paranoid about China, like you, for instance, but also live in these other countries that you say that they're getting buddy-buddy with. So any sort of plan like that is going to be very contingent on all those people not opposing it. So do not be assuming that that's going to be an easy path if your hypothesis about the situation is correct. What more? A lot of this is hard work, and China is mostly generally interested in taking care of China, and sometimes risks of big plans aren't worth it. It's like, okay, we need to make sure that the right people in our country are benefiting the most in order to keep their favor. But, at the same time, we also need to make sure all our people are getting fed because, we don't want a revolution or something like that. And that second one's a higher priority than the first one. So yeah,
your man was like, "Oh, well, yeah, but what if they invade the United States?" And I was like, there would have to have been first so many things gone wrong in the world that China would get to a point where they were considering a land invasion of the States. Because here's the thing, if there was any nation with like the sheer amount of manpower to attempt that, it would be China. But the US is big, and the US is also not the only country in North America. And then there's also Central and South America. Like, it's just, but I could not dissuade this old man from his thoughts of nefariousness that China was up to. He didn't take me at face value, and I was like, they just want money. Everybody just wants money. Like, why occupy? Why have a war? It's all about money. You win.
Trade is both the great equalizer and a pretty easy way to make money. So, just dominate trade enough and they're good.
Right, so all the Klingons need to do is to make cheap trinkets and sell them, like, on Federation websites, and everyone will buy them, and then they'll be grand.
So in other words, pull a Ferengi on them.
Exactly, yes. I love those little bastards.
So the House of Quark needs to take over and become Quark becomes the High Chancellor.
Fantastic. Do you know that Zara actually, because she's been playing Star Trek Online for years, she's got like a billion characters. She actually has a crew of communist Ferengi.
Nice.
Yes.
I think I saw a tweet about that once.
She's probably downstairs playing it right now.
Excellent.
She's also got a ship of gay Kardashians.
Nice.
They have like this party rock ship, and they're all shirtless at all times.
Nice.
Good times.
But
maybe I should start playing.
It's fun. Well, it's a free to play game, so on console. Anyway.
I think that all the discussions that you can have around these things kind of show why it's good to use these stand-in allegories like Klingons and other species like they do in Star Trek and other sci-fi. Because if you made this exact thing just about Russia, then you'd have the historical thing of like, well, this is about Russia and it happened years ago. In this one, you can put whatever you want on this. Like, we're always at war with someone. We always have something like this going on, unfortunately. So even though people who watch this now, like younger people who watch this now that don't really remember the Cold War and have only kind of heard of it from history things, you can still put whatever you want on this. Like maybe now the Klingons are China or Afghanistan or wherever we happen to be trying to claim invaders are coming from and we could make peace with, and we have unfortunate racist overtones toward
Australia.
We can keep going west or go to Australia.
Oh, lordy.
I do think there's an interesting through line with the movie because they didn't shy away from the fact that the crew is really old now.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't shy away from the giant history that they've had between Kirk and the Klingons, both in the show and the movies. Like that they've all had with Klingons. Like they are all old racists who don't think this could work. But they're basically saying, well, just because you personally have this problem, you don't have to bring it in. Like, you're doing a job, you believe that peace is good, you can still do this even if you're an old racist. You don't have to have this magical epiphany turnaround moment.
Yeah.
And be like, actually, I don't have to be a racist anymore. You've opened my eyes. Like, no, you're still an old racist and you realize it about yourself. You're just not going to stand in the way of something that's good because of your old racism.
Yeah.
I've selected that, peace and universal harmony is a good enough goal that I'll put aside my own biases in order to pursue it.
I think that and DS9 handled that really well because I think it was a storyline for a while that Chief O'Brien hated Cardassians because he was so heavily traumatized in the Cardassian War. And it was like a very complex thing where he was like, I'm a great person and I've got a wife and a child and I'm Chief O'Brien. But also he's like, fucking Cardassians.
You can't trust those people, I think it says at one point.
Yeah.
I don't remember if that was DS9 or TNG when he was on there. But it was definitely he has maybe his reasons for this, but it's still very uncomfortable to watch.
Yeah.
Which is kind of the point why they had that characterization.
And that's good, because everybody likes Chief O'Brien because it's a call meanie, everyone loves him. And you're like, wow, yeah, no, he is kind of being racist, but I guess he has a very good reason why he has those opinions, even if they're not right, and, et cetera, et cetera.
I do think it's something they pulled it off fairly well in this. They do it a bit more. DS9 had a bit of the fracturing of the Federation value system that I think made some of their messaging a little weaker on some of those points. But it is something that they've done several times through Star Trek. You're a person. You have personal biases. Not every person in this system is ever going to be perfect. But we all believe in the thing we're trying to do enough that it doesn't really matter that much.
Yeah.
We can come together and make a better future for all of us, even if each individual of that unification still has their flaws.
And I did think it was a kind of interesting little subversion that they had in here I only noticed it when I was watching through some bits a second time to write the script. But they keep going through, and even the betrayal bits with the Federation and how they're trying to assassinate people and not do the peace process. They're all going the Klingons and the Federation can never work together. It'll make both sides weak and we can't trust each other. So we, the Federation, are going to work with them, the Klingons, to make sure that we can prove that we can never work together.
Yeah, that is kind of like a very strange plot. It's like, I'm so racist that I want peace to fail. And in fact, I'm so racist that I will willingly work with the people whom I have racist attitudes towards.
Which also, it's a good one to continue their thing, because they're racist and they're willing to put their differences aside to work together to maintain the current system. And Kirk's racist and he's willing to put his racism aside to say the current system is shit.
So maybe we should get beyond our racism and have a direct argument about, what should actually be going on here.
It's both sides. The movie is actually less concerned with fixing racism as it is looking at the system that is hurting people involved in this thing. And they're saying these people are married to the old system and they don't see what their place in the new system will be, so they want to hurt a bunch of people to maintain a system that's hurting people.
Well, I mean, you could say the same thing about the military-industrial complex. We need to keep building and selling weapons of war, so we're going to precipitate issues where, global political issues where there will be war and stuff like that.
Which I do feel like is more what this is commenting on in some ways, because, all the Starfleet people are going, but what will happen to the military if the Cold War ends? Which I wasn't very aware that politics was a thing when the Cold War was ending, but I am sure that was a discussion in the room of all the people who have been living high and mighty off of bloated military budgets for 20 years going, well, what if when the Cold War ends, what do we do?
Well, it turns out you just
learn to
keep
code.
Your budget.
Yeah.
And everyone just sort of ignores the fact that you aren't necessarily needed to be so extensive here.
Now, there was I don't know how related this would be, but there was this very interesting article that I saw recently talking about like all the ways that we've changed stuff to deal with the pandemic and letting restaurants and stuff be open during the pandemic. And the basic premise is kind of any temporary solution becomes permanent eventually.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, maybe I'm just thinking about it a bit today because I got my flu shot this morning. But, last year there was basically no flu season. Just because of all the social distancing, everyone wearing masks, people staying inside. And I said, I was saying this was on Reddit a few months ago, I said, well, can we not just keep up with this kind of stuff? And one person was like, oh, you want to be locked down. I was like, no, but here's the thing. The infrastructure is already in place. There's already hand sanitizer freaking everywhere at the entrance of every store. Just keep that there. If you're sick, wear a mask. Stop touching. Everyone's become more conscious of what they're touching. People are washing their hands more often still. And so that's cutting down on disease transmission. If we reacted to the flu season, yeah, even with just the least we could possibly do, it would have an incredible impact. And I almost screenshot this because the person I was arguing with was like, oh, actually, that is a good idea. I was like,
yes.
Bet it was.
This is a good idea. So
bet it was
maybe we should do this. This would be good ideas. If we have good ideas and they make sense, maybe let's do them. Come on, people. Everyone together. Let's do things.
Although I have heard, kind of through the grapevine, that once you get that first cold, I personally haven't been sick since before the COVID, but when you get that first cold, it just absolutely wrecks you because you've forgotten what it's like to have been sick.
Mm-hmm.
I've had some seasonal allergy sort of stuff here, and once an irritated sinus, but otherwise I've not been sick since COVID was started being a thing, and it's kind of wonderful.
Yeah,
at least not.
Though I will say now, it's just anytime you get, even with seasonal allergies, it's like, oh, I got a sore throat and I did go out last week, so now I have to go to the corner, get the rapid test to cancel my weekend plans just in case I have a breakthrough thingy.
See, I would get the same, oh God, is it COVID? And then I take an antihistamine. And when the antihistamine works, I'm like, okay.
All right, we're good.
Though since we're on this aside with the flu stuff, I did hear that they might be able to use the technology that they developed for the COVID vaccine to create a generalized flu vaccine that you wouldn't have to keep taking every year.
Nice.
That'd be pretty great, because the pharmacist told me today, she said, that whatever you get is usually based on the last year's flu season. And I think there was something like a couple of thousand people who got the flu last year, and that was it.
So hopefully we know what we're doing here, because we didn't get good statistics last time.
Hooray, science.
So back to the Cold War here.
Oh, yes, sir.
So I wanted to sort of maybe put some context to some of the stuff we're talking about. So as mentioned earlier, the Chernobyl disaster was sort of the analogous to Praxis exploding there. That was in 1986. And so the there's a number of various events happened after that, of course, like someone becoming president of Afghanistan or, missile treaties and such being signed. But as far as the big Cold War, I guess, primary flex points that people remember, the next big one was the reunification of Germany in 89, where, the Berlin Wall came down, everyone changed over their channel there. Then, it's also about the same time that, Gorbachev was like, all right, so we're not going to be intervening in Eastern Europe anymore. So if you guys want to change your governments and get rid of your communist parties, go ahead there. So I think that
Except
actually
Ukraine
happened.
will be back. except the Ukraine.
And then the Soviet Union started breaking up. I think in 1990, Lithuania declaring independence and eventually actually voting to break off the next year. But the various former Soviet republics starting to get a little antsy and wanting to leave over the next couple of years there. And then finally, again, as mentioned in 91, near the end of the year, the Soviet Union officially dissolves, which is sort of the official end, I guess, of the Cold War. Also, there was a coup attempt in 91 as well.
Yeah. They shot in the Kremlin. I remember that.
Yeah, 3 days, I think it is.
Yeah, it didn't really change much, though, as I recall.
Not really. I think I remember watching some of that on TV.
Geopolitical history, as remembered through what we watched on TV.
Kind of, yeah.
It's like everyone who was children during giant geopolitical events is just like, well, my shows, though. That's how we remember anything that happened before we were 20.
Yeah, that's true.
I started getting interested in geopolitics when I was a teen, but, even still, it's sort of like, I kind of barely remember some of the weirdness going on in the 90s. It's like, oh yeah, there's the whole Yugoslavia breakup and fighting there, and Milosevic seems like a jerk.
The Balkans, right. Like, it was kind of one of those things like, oh yeah, I remember that. And for like someone that was their whole entire life as a refugee and trauma and stuff like that, you're like, lol, remember? And they're like, yeah, lol, thanks.
Like, this is awkward now. Yeah, the Yugoslavia was actually a non-aligned country during the Cold War. Also known as the Third World, is sometimes described. But so they were generally on the communist side as far as how they ran things, but they're like, we're not going to be part of the USSR sort of umbrella here, so we're going to do our own thing.
Which I think is exactly why you get these things that simplify geopolitics and take out every other country and anything, because the Klingons don't have random allies. They haven't been fighting proxy wars across other thingies for generations.
They just skulk with cloaking devices.
Exactly. So are the Klingons aligned with the Gorn? We don't know.
They just claim Shakespeare.
The original Shakespeare. I remember Mr. Colgren did a video about that.
Oh yeah, that's right.
I should go watch that at some point.
There's I'm pretty sure there are actual books in Klingon now.
Yes.
Oh, there are. Well, see, I will say that the whole first bit of this movie is one of the best written ones, even with character dialogue and characterization and everything. They really hit their stride by this point. And this is one of the only times that I find it very believable that they went, no, we need Kirk specifically to go on this mission, because they knew he would screw it up.
Yeah.
We have every confidence in you, Captain. All right, there you go.
Thank you, Admiral Cartwright. I'm glad you believe in me. Yes.
Yeah. Sure, Kirk. Great, whatever. I'll see you later. Let me know how it goes.
And they do. It's an interesting one to look at politically, because in the entire thing, you have basically one guy on each side who's very committed to making the peace process work. Because you have the Chancellor on the Klingon side, and then his daughter, who's basically just carrying on her father's thing. And you have Spock. And these are the only two people on either side that believe this thing can function at all.
Yeah, the president is kind of like, I don't know. He's kind of like the UN president. Like, look, it's just ceremonial. I'm just around, I don't know what to tell you.
Here to hang out and be angry when things go badly.
Exactly.
Pawn of the military. No.
I'm here to chew bubblegum and write policy, and I'm all out of bubblegum.
I feel like this is one of those difficult ones where, aside from some geopolitics and a couple other things, this movie's in the realm of where passive anything that's not very deep media analysis, which none of us are trained for, so I don't know why we do this, gets to anything more than the surface level stuff that this movie has already covered very well. It's so much easier to talk about the things when the movie hasn't done a good job.
True, and this is also a film that's, there's no cosmic space entity trying to destroy the world. It's just people being people, and that's complicated, and we still have to figure things out.
See, I remember way back when they did the the new Star Trek movies, the reboot series. Somebody was trying to make fun of Trekkies with it by putting out a little video of people at a Star Trek convention giving jokey reviews of the movie. And one of the ones I remember was them saying but where was the hour and a half long discussion UN style meeting of geopolitics in the future. And I was like, yeah, where was that?
The new, like the J.J. Abrams averse, I like the aesthetic because it is very like, the Enterprise if it were made by Apple. But I don't know.
I also like the Willy Wonka sort of engine room because an antimatter reactor really kind of should be overly complicated and scary to like try to figure out.
Yeah, I like how in Next Generation it's just this big pulsing pillar and we're just all okay with that.
Yes.
Don't go too near the matter reactor, guys.
Hang on, this thing is an antimatter reactor here, so this is going to be putting off a lot of particles, right? Yeah. So radiation. Are we safe standing here, or are we going to all die in a few minutes?
No one is
Don't
ever
worry
having
about it.
children in the engineering department. It's just
Like, what's this thing do? Energy?
It's magic.
it's
don't
like
worry about it.
those scientists that were fucking around with that radioactive core. They nicknamed the Dragon Core because, of course, this sounds like a great idea.
Mhm.
And then it's for listeners who don't know. I mean, Google it; it's horrific. But they accidentally screwed up, and it's closed, and it shot a proton beam through like all of them. And I'm pretty sure some survived, but like one guy died of like awful radioactive falling apart disease.
Good example of radiation exposures, of the super lethal kind. It's actually showcased in Stargate SG-1, when Daniel Jackson gets himself irradiated, and well, he gives a rundown. It's like, so the next thing that's going to happen is going to be like necrosis and something called ataxia, and it's going to be a bad time, and then we witness some of that, and yeah, it's a bad time.
Getting radioactive to death is not a good death.
I'm trying my best not to veer the conversation into my time working at Fermilab, but maybe later.
Oh dear.
But you mean the Stargate episode where they basically take Fat Man and Little Boy and condense it into like a 1 hour TV show?
Kind of. Like we're building our planet's first atomic bomb, but it's also crazy mineral special sci-fi stuff.
Yeah, where they do the Demon Core thing, and that's it.
Oh, is it the Demon Core? I called it the Dragon Core. Well, that sounds more, punk.
I honestly can't remember, but I have a strong memory of it being called the Demon Core.
I believe you.
But I have not looked it up. So one of us could be right.
Are you sure? It's probably we're both wrong somehow. It's probably something else entirely. The Dragon Ball
probably.
Core or something like that.
The Dragon Ball Core.
That would be fantastic.
It's like a Dragon Ball. It grants you wishes, but you also get radiation poisoning.
If you turn on the Geiger counter, it's over 9,000.
I don't know how those units work, so maybe.
It's over 9,000.
Can something be over 9,000 rads, Isix?
Oh, easily.
Probably like the
Okay, good.
sun or something.
Sort of an aside here about radiation exposure. They, in my radiation trading, it's like, all right, so anything above 50 millirems, that's a class 1. So it's basically you don't eat it and you're going to be fine. And but unless it's over 200, in which case is a class 2. Limit your exposure. And class 3, that's the hottest thing you're normally going to run into here at the lab. Also, we have a class 4 and class 5 thing, and long story short, if you are anywhere near a class 5, you're already going to die, so don't worry about it.
What level is dental x-ray? Because that always used to scare me as a child.
Higher than background for sure, but I don't remember, sort of what your exposure thing is. And as far as counting this stuff up, it's always sort of a cumulative, not, as far as your own exposure goes. And it's kind of smushy as far as, how dangerous radiation is. So.
Oh, I know. Just when I was a kid, they were like, wear this lead apron. I'm going to skitter away. Don't worry. Everything's
well, that's the thing
fine.
that people talk about. I saw a very good description of that. That people say that, like, oh, the doctor says it's going to be fine, then leaves the room and hides in a radiation-proof bunker. It's like, yeah, well, you get exposed to this thing for 10 seconds. They have to do it 40 times a day, every day for years.
Yeah, that's true.
So their exposure builds up over time.
Although I was probably just looking for like an excuse not to have to go to the dentist.
Yeah, probably. Like, this just reminds me that this is completely out of nowhere, but we seem to have run out of other things to talk about.
Yeah, Star Trek Sick, it's good.
Yeah.
Go on, see
a kid at the Grand Canyon was playing with a Geiger counter and found some just radioactive barrels in the back
Yes.
storeroom somewhere.
Whoops.
I heard about that.
And I know several people who live up there. My parents work up there. They were all just like, this place is built on a uranium mine. Everything's radioactive. Why are you all freaking out?
So I saw that story come up, and it was from, I checked it out first. It was from a pretty reputable actual newspaper. And so I quote retweeted it. And all I said was, oh my God, that's incredible. Not incredible good or bad, but wow, gosh, that's something significant. And then immediately, someone I'm friends with, and then two of their followers showed up to be like, no, radiation is actually awesome. And I was like, no, I wasn't passing judgment. I was, okay, I don't want to hear any more about radiation.
Not when you're standing next to it.
I believe your radiation is fantastic and lovely and it tastes like McDonald's. I'm sorry.
Say, the people who I know who work up at the canyon, I was like, have you heard of this story? I was like, oh yeah, that kid.
Yeah.
That
Yeah,
dick.
nothing to worry about.
Always fucking causing trouble.
Now, speaking of uranium, sort of a interesting science fact is that so uranium breaks down, due to decay there, eventually produces radon gas, right?
Oh yeah, radon detector.
Builds up in people's basements and things like that, and that can be potentially a bit of a problem because it's also radioactive generally. And so you get this radon gas that seeps out of the earth and tends to be more in places where there's uranium somewhere underground. But there's can be trace amounts of that kind of everywhere too. An interesting thing about radon though is because it's radioactive as well. It's also decaying, and what it decays into isn't a gas. So it seeps, goes up into the atmosphere, decays, and suddenly you got bismuth and lead, radioactive lead bismuth, suspended in the atmosphere. And so when it rains, it precipitates out.
But though that's something that would have always been happening, though, because there's always been like uranium in the ground, right?
But you don't often bring uranium up to the surface as
that's a good point.
often as we do.
But sometimes people do freak out about. It's like they bring out their Geiger counter, and during like after a snow or something like that, they're like, "Oh, all this snow is radioactive. Clearly, somebody's trying to poison us." No, it's just a natural phenomenon.
No one was trying to poison you. We just do it by accident very often.
Well, isn't the natural background radiation that you would detect, isn't that the thing that's the fingerprint of the Big Bang?
Well, there is that.
Or do I have this confused up? Because I know, like, if you turn an old tube TV on and it's not tuned to a channel, the static apparently the static that you get is it's really, I saw this at a museum and it sounded like it was true.
So a fraction of that, is the cosmic background radiation.
Okay, that's what I was
that's
thinking.
like a radio signal sort of deal, which is fairly low energy compared to the output of radioactive uranium. And also there's multiple types of radiation. There's electromagnetic, of course, which is what the cosmic microwave background is. There's also gamma rays, which is much higher energy and tend to be nasty. There's alpha particles, which are basically ionized helium that can get kicked off a large nuclei. And there's also beta radiation, which is positrons or electrons, depending on what exactly is going on. And those can be fairly penetrating, so you want more than a piece of paper in order to block that. But the gamma radiations are the ones you have to really worry about. So Chernobyl.
Some of it's Big Bang radiation, and some of it's just the random way we irradiated the world by playing Happy Fun Nuke Times in the 60s.
Here's all the different ways you can die from fallout today.
Also, bananas, they have potassium-40 in them. That's highly radioactive.
I heard about that, and I think that's fantastic.
In fact, when I was in grad school doing my research, the potassium-40 line was one of the easiest ones to identify on my equipment, because it's like, well, it's bigger than everything else and also bigger than most of the background. So, hooray! And I don't have any bananas nearby. This is on the top of a mountain. Where's the potassium? I don't know.
One of your lab assistants has a banana in their back pocket. She didn't say anything.
Dang it. What was her name? Anyway. So at Chernobyl, it was a bad time.
Not the best, as you may well have seen on the fantastic documentary series done by Netflix.
Yes, I've not seen that, so most
Spoilers.
of my knowledge of Chernobyl has been mostly from reading and things like that.
Yes, spoilers. Chernobyl bad.
Yeah, a series of bad safety and poor decision making, and suddenly your reactor's melting down, and well, we can't do much with that. Maybe try to put some concrete on it, I guess. Maybe.
A friend of mine who's a little bit younger than me, from my cohort at uni, was like, "Oh, have you watched Chernobyl yet? It's really good. It's really class." And I was like, "No, I'm not going to watch it. I know how it ends." And she's like, "What do you mean? It hasn't? Did you watch the whole thing?" And I was like, "No, because it's real life Chernobyl. I know
The
what
thing that actually happened.
And she's like, "Stop being obnoxious." And I was like, "Listen."
Nah.
Yeah, they created a weird exclusion zone. The crows and wolves took over. We don't know how the radioactive crows and wolves are doing yet. Could be interesting.
Well, YouTubers are always going, so.
Radioactive crows, wolves, and YouTubers.
And YouTubers are definitely the prime example of health in America.
Exactly.
I'm seeing a piglet with Dipius. It doesn't look like it's too healthy there.
I mean, people still live there. There's some old curmudgeonly people who are like, I'm not leaving. This is my home. And to just stay there because they're Russians.
Good luck.
They probably make good money now from like all the tourism. Yeah, because like you can go. It's just you shouldn't stay there very long, but apparently you can go now. My father-in-law, who is big traveler, he really wants to go, and I was like, okay.
If you really want, good luck.
There's other places you could go.
Yeah, that's not so radioactive and, I don't know, evil. Not evil, but
Dangerous.
probably
Hazardous,
very haunted, if that's your thing.
Yeah. So praxis tourism is one of the things that they don't talk about in Next Gen. But
Do you know there's a guide to Kronos? Like it's a sci-fi book. We used to have a copy of it when I worked at the bookstore. But it's basically like a Lonely Planet travel guide, but for they do a whole bunch of different sci-fi ones, and there's one for Kronos.
Cool. Any snazzy details to share?
I flipped through it once when I was supposed to be working, but it was pretty cool. It was like, you can't miss going to so and so's opera house when you're in the city of things and stuff with the average temperature. So it was kind of very very world building, very tongue in cheek as well.
Nice.
Now, to be fully aware of Chernobyl, there, the exclusion zone and Chernobyl itself is actually nowadays mostly in Ukraine and Belarus. So ethnic Russians, Ukrainians, Belarusians, all being curmudgeon-y, hanging out there.
Getting thyroid cancer.
Yes, lots of thyroid cancer. Looking at some of the data there, and you're like, yeah, that's not healthy.
All right. Since we've gotten to so many other things, did anyone have anything that they specially wanted to bring up before we move on to the last bit so that we aren't recording for 3 hours?
That's a good point. My big thing was I thought when I was a kid that the Klingons having Pepto-Bismol colored blood was cool. I thought that was neat.
That is true.
Yeah. I guess that was like a computer technology limitation, was something of how the rendering color works. I don't understand
We
it
thought it might be
fully.
because to save them a rating.
Oh, yeah, that too.
Possibly, yeah.
But the CGI looked really bad. It looked so good when I was a kid, but I was like, seriously, really?
But I just remember when I watched this originally with my mom, she was like, oh my god, the blood, like, that's how fluids move in microgravity. Isn't that cool?
Yes, but it's also awesome.
Yeah, Mom, but like the blood's purple. That's my imitation of us all as children.
It's also the Expanse covers coagulation and all that sort of stuff when it in 0G a bit, but I'm not quite sure how much that take actually is, I guess, accurate, but I'm guessing it's probably close to the reality, maybe, which would be that given how fluids move around in a body in gravity, it might be more difficult to stop bleeding in microgravity.
I never thought about that. Like, if you just got like a small cut in microgravity, would it just keep flowing until it clotted, or would the lack of gravity impact clotting?
Well, the surface tension would hold it
That's a
together
good point.
on your skin.
Yes. If you have a major wound, it could cause some weird issues, maybe. Your heart's still pumping out, and if you have this a big wound, say a missing arm or a phaser blast to the chest there, it could cause some complications.
Though this movie, I don't know what, like, I think they were trying to go for a really visceral scene, but my God, phasers have never been so gory.
True.
Yeah, that's a good point, because usually it's just like a little glowing burned patch on their outfit, and everyone's like, oh, he died the way he lived by a phaser.
He got shot in the shoulder, but he has a major chest wound.
Yeah.
Yeah, this one, they're like punching holes through people, arms are coming off.
Those were the bad old days when phasers meant phaser.
We're going to cause maximum damage here.
They spend this whole movie talking about how necessary peace is, which is a good message that they bring in through a lot of the rest of through a lot of Star Trek stuff. Mm-hmm. But like this one is showing like, here's the alternative. It is brutal and awful, and we're not cleaning it up.
It's going to be painful. There's going to be mess everywhere, and yeah, it's going to be a bad time.
Definitely.
So, long story short, folks, don't murder each other. Do not murder each other. It's going to be nasty.
I endorse that.
Apparently, there's so much to say about this movie that we can't, and we get onto geopolitics for several hours.
I'm helping provide premium content.
Yeah, I could go and talk about more of the Cold War if you really like. The specific movements to would break off Ukraine, for instance, are kind of interesting. But I don't think that's going to be something that we can easily cover here in a reasonable amount of time, and it'd just be me talking at you guys. So
that's fair.
Yeah, so you can do that for a filler episode later.
Hooray!
And
let's talk about the Ukraine.
And now it's probably time to move on to the galaxy's favorite game show.
Hey everybody, and welcome to the galaxy's favorite game show, the last one of the Star Trek films. I think our old crew has done themselves pretty well. They each one of them's got over like 1 billion points now in total, but we only count them for each movie or episode individually. So unfortunately, we don't have the Lifetime Achievement Awards to hand out because we don't do that here. Anyway, we got several prizes to hand out because, they've got some people doing some cool stuff here, or questionable things. The first one is the Medical Malpractice Award, which goes to McCoy for having all that time to learn and then forget anatomy of Klingons. And, they're kind of an important species that you might need to, do some medicine on at some point. So what does he win, Gepwin?
McCoy wins the visible Klingon. So it's like, the little plastic see-through dudes that we used to get model kits of, because then you know where the liver and things are. And it's kind of important. And, that's how we all learned anatomy, right?
We don't have the TNG folder scanner to do, the whole mock-up and realize, Klingons have 12 livers or something like that. So, that might be a good option for McCoy. Our second prize is the Cold War Strategy Prize. It goes to Chancellor Gorkon for seeking peace. Once it's clear that this whole Cold War thing just isn't going to work out, what does he win, Omega?
Well, Bob, today he's going to win this piece of the Berlin Wall that I've got on my desk. It's a metaphor.
Excellent. I'm sure he'll appreciate it, hopefully before he gets shot. Our third prize is the Rejecting Surak Prize, which goes to Valeris, because murdering the Chancellor is most likely going to lead to violence, not peace, which is what Surak was all about. What does she win, Gepwin?
She wins the 5D chess set, because she's playing some 5D chess. You don't even understand how murdering people actually logically leads to better peace later. And oh my God, I'm so smart. I totally didn't drop out of college. Go away.
Well, I guess she did graduate top of her class in Starfleet. Or did she? Dun, dun, dun.
Mary Sue.
Our fourth prize is the Evil Twin Prize, which goes to Martia for pulling a whole Lord Garth sort of thing and looking like Kirk in order to fight him. What does she win, Omega?
Well, Jack, she's won a goatee, because you can't be an evil twin without a fake goatee. Also, Spirit Halloween's open, so she can stock up just.
That's a good point. I should get me some fake goatees. Anyway, our fifth prize is the Shakespeare Enthusiast Prize, which goes to General Chang. And, because, McCoy's he'll give real money to have General Chang shut up and all that. He gets a little over the top. Anyway, what does he win, Gepwin?
He wins any other book of plays or poetry. It's I get we have a big hard-on for Shakespeare now, and we want to, whitewash all of history, but at this point, still being this obsessed with Shakespeare makes it seem like culture has not advanced in 1,000 years at all. Can we can we get any other dude? We'll even accept another old white guy. Just anybody else. Literally any other quote. Let's just find something, please.
I know plenty of authors myself, and they'd love to get quoted in Star Trek. You just have to ask them, it'd be fine. Come on, folks. Our last prize is the Shatner Discontinuity Prize, which goes to William Shatner, not Kirk, William Shatner, for stealing the Excelsior's mission's backstory in order to make sure no one had to rescue the Enterprise. What does he win, Omega?
Well, Kevin, William Shatner today has won a premium IMDb membership so he can go onto the forums and actually everyone who complains about the plot.
Excellent. We got... I think this is a good place to wrap up our original series around here, and I'd like to thank Gepwin and Omega and all our other previous guests here for making the Galaxy's favorite game show just kind of amazing. Feel free to take us away, guys.
Yes, thank you, everyone. I think Shatner might already have that prize in real life. The guy's a dick if we haven't made it clear already. Thank you all for joining us here on the Galaxy's favorite game show.
Yay.
Omega, you said not doing too many videos and things like that now. But if the audience wants to support you, how can they do that?
I guess you can go follow me on Twitter. I tweet things. I've got a YouTube channel, but I don't really post much. Some of that stuff probably will be going unlisted shortly. I've been toying around with the idea of having a YouTube channel just for lectures and stuff like that. But if you want to follow me on Twitter, I'm a good follow. At least I think so.
I've been a fan of your stuff for a good long while, and
thanks.
Independent of what you decide with your previously posted content, I'll keep following you on Twitter, and hope everyone else does as well.
Well, thanks everybody.
As for what we're going to be doing next, I told Gepwin that during the before we start TNG, I'll basically take over all the hard bits for an episode to cover a movie. So Omega, should I be tricksy here?
I mean, you could be a bit tricksy if you're thinking in a New Zealand frame of mind.
Maybe.
I mean, I ain't saying. I'm just saying.
Is.
That's exactly what I was thinking. Oh, can I plug something that's not mine, but it might be relevant to your interests?
Oh, go ahead.
So I've got a friend, John D. Ruddy, and he's lives in the town where I am, and he was on the channel of stuff back in the day. He's mostly known for he's an artist and author and actor. He does everything. He's written a few books about Irish history for kids, but he started a podcast during the COVID, and it's still going. It's on Spotify. It's called Where Many Have Gone Before, where basically himself, who is completely new to Star Trek, and a friend of his co-host, who is super, super into Star Trek, are watching every single episode ever. And they started with the original series. So if you guys want to check that out, it's really good. So I have plugged.
But as far as what we're going to be covering next, Gepwin, I have a question for you.
Yes.
Sex, drugs, and rock and roll. Pick two.
Well, that's a difficult one. I don't do very many drugs, so I guess I'll just discount that one. We'll go with sex and rock and roll.
Well, that's an interesting choice then. So the other two choices for rock and roll and drugs would have been Southland Tales. Drugs and sex would have been the Congress. But rock and roll and sex, there's only one option really left over at that point. Have you ever done the time warp?
Oh no. I've kept wondering whether that counts as science fiction.
Well, there's beams and people from other planets, and there's a whole Frankenstein sort of thing going on. So, yes?
I mean, if you're picking movies, I guess it's your call what counts as science fiction.
I'm going to call it science fiction. So, the next time you see an episode of Watches of Tomorrow, folks, we're going to be doing the Rocky Horror Picture Show.
Ooh.
Now that's going to be an interesting one.
Yes, there might be some singing involved. We'll see.
All right. So thank you very much, Omega, for joining us.
Oh, thanks for having me.
I think we got onto a lot of geopolitics. I don't know if anyone expected that one. But
Well, this is the geopolitics movie.
That's true. So, yes, go follow Omega on Twitter. Is a good follow, can confirm.
Mm-hmm.
And apparently, next time we will be doing the American cult classic Rocky Horror Picture Show.
Next time on Watchers of Tomorrow, I see you quiver in anticipation. You have been listening to Watchers of Tomorrow, a podcast on science fiction media. Find and follow Watchers of Tomorrow on Podbean, YouTube, Spotify, iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, Pocket Cast, Spreader, Digital Podcast, and perhaps many more to come. If you enjoy our podcast, make sure to subscribe for more. And where possible, make sure to rate your experience or leave us a review. You may find Gepwin on youtube.com/Gepwin and Twitter @Gepwin. You may find me, Dr. Isix, on youtube.com/Dr. Isix and Twitter @IsixLP. Music is Waveform and Mori's Principle, both by DRKRN. You can also check out the Watchers of Tomorrow Discord channel. Make sure to share the experience with your friends, family, enemies, and alien overlords. If you feel you are suffering from transporter syndrome, please be aware that the next time you step off the transporter, that you, that is now, no longer exists.